Now over to you, Ray. Thank you.
Hey everyone, how you doing? We're going to walk this stage. Hopefully I don't hit anything that creates like feedback. But I want to talk a little bit about the shift that's going on. How many of you guys have heard about the sharing economy? Who's used like an Uber and Airbnb? Raise your hands. Okay. So we've heard about the sharing economy. Now, how many folks are in the enterprise world? Raise your hands. How many people are in the consumer world? Okay. Now, if you're in the enterprise world, you're probably wondering, how the hell do I do this in the sharing economy, right? Does this even make sense? And what I'm going to spend some time talking about is for digital business, digital transformation, licensing, sharing economy. We're going to pull all these things together. And that's going to be part of the fun that we're going to talk about today. Now, I was going to do it without slides. I'm not sure if I can, because there's a lot going on. But I'm going to start with this. Many of you guys have seen this if you've been to some of the smaller events. And what's happening now, this is the most important thing. 52% of the Fortune 500 have gone bankrupt, merged, acquired, fallen off the list since 2000. What does that mean? Think about that. These are companies. This is the shift. This is the change. Now, there's an American Enterprise Institute study that shows that 88% of the Fortune 500 have been gone since inception in 1955. And what that means is there's been a lot of change since 2000. Now, we live in the valley. We know, okay, it's the internet. But it's much more than that. And this is where your role becomes so important, because there's a business model shift. It was a business model shift, not because of the internet. There's a business model shift in the sharing economy, not because of mobile or social or cloud or big data. It's a business model shift. Your job is to figure out, how do we monetize that business model shift that is happening now because of digital, and take that and transform it. Now, the sharing economy is out there. It's one aspect of it. It's just as interesting as freemium was for you, which was not that interesting, right, because you didn't make any money off of that. But that's not the point. The point being is it opened up the doors to a different conversation. And that's what the sharing economy does. It opens up the door to a different conversation about how you intersect with customers, how you intersect with the product, how the product intersects into an ecosystem, and how you bring all that to life. And more importantly, how do we monetize this? How do we bring that to another level? Now, the sharing economy started much, much earlier. It was really something in a book that Rachel Botsman put together in a TED Talk probably 5, 6 years ago. I sat down with her in Sydney about 3 months ago. She's actually speaking at our conference next week. And I asked her, what was the sharing economy about? Right? She had wrote a book, What's Mine is Yours. And it was a very interesting thing about talking about extra capacity, talking about how you could help someone else out. But then the Valley got into the sharing economy. And it became Uber, and it became Airbnb, and it became Etsy, and all these other things that were falling around that had a monetization angle. And so that's the gap that we're trying to bridge through that. Now, when we think about this, there's a bigger gap that's going on right now in all your businesses. Those that figured out this digital business model, those that are moving in towards this digital business model, are creating a huge gap in their ability to scale. It's some of that automation that we had talked about earlier today. But it's more than that automation. It's the fact that they're scaling business models. You need less people. You're scaling to more individuals. You're actually scaling a level of automation that has never been seen before. And that's kind of what we'll start by talking about. Now, this change is happening at the same time where we're feeling a lot of pressure around the pace of change. And that's anything from weird outbreaks, civil unrest, interesting weather patterns. Right, that's going on too. But the 3 other factors are the ones that we have to focus in on. And those 3 other factors are the way we work is different. Where we work, when we work, how we work, what we work. Even the rationale of why we work has changed. How many people worked from home 10 years ago? How many people work from home today? Sometimes. How many people actually work? No, I'm just kidding. But we're seeing that. We see a shift, right? So you see something simple like that. What we work for is also very different. And that exchange of value becomes important as we talk about the sharing economy. And we'll get to that. Now, in addition to that, we're also looking at all these different technologies. We're living in the Valley. All these different technologies pop up. Right? You could watch TechCrunch all day, look for all the things, all the startups that are being funded, and say, I see a pattern. Right? But the reality is all these technologies are coming up, some without any really good business cases, things we can't monetize. And what we're really trying to do is put these things together. And you get interesting business models, which is the last part. That's what we really want to get to. What is Uber at the essence of Uber? It is the combination of social, our ability to rate a driver and say, oh, that was wonderful, on time, car was clean, came with a bottle of water. The driver can rate you. Slob, walked in, stunk, didn't even tip, right? There's a feedback loop, which makes that very different. It's also in the cloud. That's how it connects all these different devices, how it connects the networks, brings it together. It's mobile because we're in motion, not because of a device. Think about that carefully. Mobile because we're in motion. We're doing something different. Has nothing to do with the device. You got 30 seconds to do something. It's a very different paradigm. It's big data. How many of you guys ever went and flagged a cab in the rain and then looked for Uber in the rain? Your $10 ride became $30. It's called surge pricing, pricing optimization. Isn't that wonderful? And that's where big data comes into place and the insights. It's pulling all that together to create a brand new business model, which is let's go disintermediate cabs, but also let's think about the data model so we can figure out where are the actual places where point A to point B transportation people will pay for. People will pay for A to B. They'll pay for certain goods from A to B. And what is the dynamic of that pricing? How much more will they pay for that pricing to be successful? That's a very interesting shift. So all that's going on. Let's start with the workers. Let's start what's happening here, because this is part of the reason we have this sharing economy that's in place. 5 generations of workers, not Gen X, not Gen Y. I don't care about age warfare that's going on with millennials versus everybody else. How many of you guys are sick of hearing about millennials? I didn't mean to start the war. So the point being is we actually see 5 generations of workers by digital natives, digital immigrants, right? Digital voyeurs, digital holdouts, and digitally disengaged. At home, since everyone here is probably local, who woke up to an alarm clock this morning? Raise your hands. Who woke up to a watch? It's not cool yet. It will be in a couple months. Who woke up to a smartphone? All right, what did you think I woke up to? An alarm clock, a watch, or smartphone? Smartphone. There's an assumption that I woke up to a smartphone because I look the way I do and I live in the valley. I have a Sony Dream Machine from 1983. Is what I wake up to. Now in a hotel room, I don't even know how to use that thing, right? I have no idea what that is. It has a little connector. I can charge an iPhone, but it doesn't work with the iPhone I have. But that's what it is, right? That makes me a digital immigrant. When you're sitting here, I see people jotting notes on pen and paper. That makes you a digital immigrant. Are you taking pictures and sending it to yourself? That is a digital immigrant, right? A digital native would just jump straight into Evernote, OneNote, and be done, right? Not worry about that. There are people who grew up with the internet that are digital natives that are in their 70s. So what I'm trying to tell you is age is not the deciding factor. Think about the shift that's going on by how people are familiar with the technology, how comfortable they're using that technology, and that's the intersection. What are digital voyeurs? They're the ones that are looking at it. They're okay. They know what's happening. They're not against it. They're not going to fight. Digital holdouts are like, oh, no, I'm not going to do this. I'm not interested. And you got digitally disengaged. They're not Luddites. They did this before you did. They are just scared post-Snowden of what's going on. They don't want to leave a digital exhaust. Now, when you put this into context in terms of how people are willing to engage in the sharing economy, it's not a millennials thing. It's about people who are more digitally inclined, people who are digital natives. And when you think about it, it's not necessarily a change thing. You just have to be aware that digital proficiency helps in terms of adoption and cultural change, especially when people are adopting new pricing models, especially when people are adopting new types of engagement, which is the challenge. We've always thought it was an age thing, or many of us thought it was an age thing, and now you got to think about it from a digital proficiency perspective. So we talked about these things, social, mobile, cloud, big data, but let's break down what these are. Mobile, like I said, is not about a device. It's work in motion. But it does change what happens when you have large, big processes. You got to break them down because you only got 30 seconds. 30 seconds to do something. And that's a very, very different way. 30 seconds to monetize, 30 seconds to engage, 30 seconds to create some value. That's the most amount of time I will give you between texting and driving and somewhere in the car. No, just kidding. But that's the kind of stuff that's going on, right? You don't have a lot of time to get this stuff working. Now, when you think about what's going on with social, social is not about create, read, update, delete. Wait, that's crud. That's the old word. Social is about new verbs. How do we get beyond create, read, update, delete? How do we share things? How do we collaborate? How do we bring other things to life? That's new monetization. Social is not about just Facebook or Twitter. What I'm talking about in social is we've changed the way. We've taken transactional systems and we are now abstracting them so we can engage against them. And when you collaborate and work at that level, you're creating new business models. You're changing the equation. And then when we think about where cloud is about compute power and storage and the ability to access this all on demand, all in terms of getting to agile and really being able to pull things on, spin up instances, spin up products, spin up services at a very rapid rate. And then when we think about video and UC, those are collaboration tools. We're using them to kind of accelerate what we're doing. There's other stuff. There's Internet of Things, there's 3D printers, but I'm not excited about the technology itself. What I'm excited about is how do we now access that technology versus own that technology. And when we access technology, you're paying per use, you're paying per instance, you're paying for a period of time. It's very different. Do I access it once? Do I get value for accessing it multiple times? When do I make that decision versus lease versus own? That's really the question. And you are in charge of understanding what that sensitivity is between those two areas. When do you own? When do you access? What is the most important thing? Right? And I don't know. Right? We're creating brand new models on the fly. These things are just happening. Just like when we were going through the freemium era where people were saying, here's how do we build against that. And so the only thing I can tell you at this moment is we are no longer selling products and services anymore. And I'll walk through some examples. We're actually keeping brand promises. Product companies are selling services. They're giving away the products to sell services. Services companies are giving away their services to sell experiences, different types of granulated experiences. Experiences companies are promising outcomes. And outcomes companies are going back to the root cause of why someone exists as a company, which is their brand authenticity. What do they stand for? Why do they exist? Everything comes back to that, especially in this digital world, and we're seeing that shift. And so this battle for experiences and outcomes, it's happening right now. And it starts in different ways. This is a very interesting slide, and I'm going to ask you a very important question because you guys should all know this answer. What is the most important metric in the airline industry? Shout it out.
Revenue passenger miles.
Yes, exactly. But how many people thought safety? Raise their hands. How many people thought on time? How many people thought customer experience? Right? None of those matter. They really don't. And that's the sad thing. Now, we have two types of planes here. We have the bottom, an Airbus A380 that supports revenue per passenger mile. We also have a Dreamliner that supports revenue per passenger mile. What happens with the Airbus A380? It supports the hub and spoke model. And basically, this plane puts more butts into seats. So I can do San Fran to London, London to Dubai, Sydney to Dubai, Dubai to Tokyo, Tokyo to New York, big hub and spoke routes. And to me, that's an incremental transformation, right? Move the needle, continue to push the product forward. We do that, right? It's an incremental release. What we have up here is a very ultra lightweight, fuel efficient plane, and when it's flying and not on fire, just kidding, when it's flying, it's fine, it's fine. I took one, it's fine. It allows you to do crazy stuff. I can go from San Jose to Osaka. Who the hell came up with that route? I could do Indianapolis to Beijing. You can break the hub and spoke model, and that's completely transformational, but it also addresses revenue per passenger mile. It all comes down to the business model you're going to play in. And if the metrics are the same, how are you going to shift the business model? And what this is going back to is the old point-to-point, non-stop model that we used to have. This is the model that airlines prefer for efficiencies on a hub and spoke. They're battling on these two models right now. Different airlines are experimenting where they go. So someone alluded earlier to the medical industry and the device industry, and this is a great example. Think about Siemens, or Varian, or Philips, or GE. What is the most important thing in the US medical system? What is the most important metric here? Shout it out. Patient outcome. But for the owner-operator of this machine, it's revenue per scan per day. Right? How much output can I get out of this machine? Now, I don't really know the pricing, but let me make some abstract pricing numbers. Let's assume this is $1 million, €1 million for the machine. Then they tried to sell you a financing plan, but you know interest rates are kind of low, so they're not making much money on that. Then they came up with service and support. Of course, right? Like all good companies. Let's do a service and support plan. So they put a service and support plan in. Okay, that's fine. But none of that really matters to the customer. What would completely change this business? And I know other folks are going to be talking about Internet of Things and that connectivity piece, and you'll see how this ties back. The most important thing is uptime in this business. I am willing to pay $3 million for 80% uptime on that machine for the next 3 years. I might even pay $4.5 million for 95% uptime. Think about that. What happens when you move to uptime? You are responsible for maintenance. You're responsible for every piece of that part. You're responsible for field service and scheduling. You're responsible for replacement. And so with all the data and all the connectivity and all the instrumentation that's happening in this model, you know which suppliers suck. You know what parts are going to fail. You know exactly a lot of information about how these things connect with each other. You now have reliability ratings on everything. Right? You're going to make sure that there's one of these devices within a 100-mile radius of a hospital that just signed a 95% uptime guarantee. And it's a very, very different game. And that's a business model shift. You're no longer selling products. You're promising an outcome. This thing's going to be up and running 80% or 95% of the time. It's a different business model. But we're still supporting revenue per patient per scan. That's a very interesting shift. And in the digital world, what happens on top of this is now you got services revenue from the data. You've got insights revenue that you can go sell and broker. Why is Hopkins Hospital doing better than Sinai, or doing better than Sloan Kettering, or better than Mayo, or better than someone else here like Stanford? I don't know, but I've got the data. And I can now broker that data and create brand new business models, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So in this digital world, this is happening. And we also have other kind of things, like Disney. Right? We've talked about Disney. Did we do this last year, Disney? I think so. Some of you guys heard this. But think about Disney. You go in, you watch the movie once. You buy the VHS. Who did that? You're just old, but I did too. You bought the DVD, and you bought the Blu-ray. And how many guys watched it again on Netflix? It's a great model, right? This is the whole P about IP licensing and software and products. That's the whole idea, right? They've got you. But it's more than that. You'll then go to a theme park. You potentially will go on a Disney cruise. And you are willing to pay more for all these things, for a Disney experience. And on top of that, when you're ready to retire, there is a place in Bangalore, India, and Celebration, Florida, where you can retire in a Disney community. And you go to Disney Park. What is the experience? It is controlled. It is restrictive, right? They're planned everything that they want you to follow. They put little bands on you and track you throughout the park. But you love it, and you pay more for it. Why do you do this? It's the brand. If you own a brand, if you stand for something, if you have brand authenticity, even in a digital world, in an analog instance, in a digital world, you're not fighting for faster, better, cheaper. You're not going down to that, can I do that cheaper? Can I cut this cost? Can I go down an operational efficiency route? Can I beat them on price? You're in a different game. And this becomes more important than anything else. This was the brand authenticity part I was talking about. If you stand for brand value, you don't have to worry about the same kind of things your competitors do. Doesn't mean you don't run efficient. Doesn't mean you apply the same kind of rules. Doesn't mean you monetize the crap out of everything, which Disney does a good job of. But that's what I'm talking about. How do we get to that level of value? That's what's important here. Take the NFL, right? Actually, I have to choose my examples better. Take the NFL, and I know this is on video. Take the NFL. I mean, it stands for something, right? What do you think the NFL, what was the whole point of a fan experience? Raise out, tell me and shout out what's important in a fan experience. Merchandise. What else? What? Winning. What else? Yeah, I know, bad game last night. What else? What else? Is it the food? Is it not waiting in line? Is it getting the season tickets? Right? Is there an NPS score to this thing? Butts and seats, statistics. But I'm talking about outcomes. What do I need to feel? Fun, okay? Let me show you. We can do cool technologies like augmented reality and say, oh, cool, there's the beer, there's a line, this one's shorter. But that's not the point. The point is this. We are searching for higher level outcomes when we go from products to brand promises. Those higher level outcomes are that time you had with your dad at the game, the time you closed the deal, hometown pride. Right? We're looking for higher level outcomes. These aren't things you traditionally go out and measure. Right? This isn't on your balanced scorecard. It's not going to be there. Right? There's no ROI measure. You're looking for something higher and aspirational if you're going to go from products to brand promises. And that's the essence of what's happening in the digital side of the world. Right? Look at these. Other than role models, that's not helping us at the moment. Right? But ideally, there would be a role model, someone you would aspire to be with. Right? So these are super high level outcomes that we're looking at. And so when I talk about digital, and I'll talk about sharing economy next, when I talk about digital, this is more than a technology shift. We're talking about a business model transition. We're talking about a transformation in a business. You don't have to be a new business to make this transformation. You did it with cloud. You did it with software as a service. This is the same kind of shift, but accelerated when we talk about these new models. Now, there is something that we put in HBR a long time ago, and it's really talking about the analog to digital shift, right? And just look at it, it's moving from transactions to engagement. But I think the main thing you have to know is that today we're sitting in a transactional world with the stuff that we have, whether it's hardware, whether it's software, whether it's our experiences. And we're moving to a world of engagement. In the world of engagement, what's happening is we're sensing, we're responding, we're acting more socially. We're connecting in a very different world. We're getting information in real time. But when we move out to experiences off of engagement and towards mass personalization at scales, which with digital, that's the promise around digital, things become more contextual. Things become much more relevant. Things become intention-driven. We have the data to predict what's going to happen next. We don't take the best practices of the 80s, delivered in the 90s, refactored in 2000, and sell it to someone. We decompose the processes and assume that in a mobile world, you got 30 seconds. And I might start here, end up over there. He might start over here and end up down over here. It becomes a choose-your-own-adventure book of contextual, probabilistic processes that happen. That's what we're designing for. And that's what's the shift that's going on in digital. Now, how does that tie back to the sharing economy? Well, the sharing economy isn't that new. In fact, have you ever hitchhiked? Anyone hitchhiked? There we go. We got some folks, right? Now, if you've hitchhiked, that is basically the essence of rideshare on the East Bay. It's legalized. They're fine. Like, you go back to the sharing economy, the whole point is, like, I go to San Francisco 4 times a week when I'm local, right? I'm happy to take anyone there so long they're not an axe murderer and they don't stink. Now, if I could easily find a tool that would allow me to do that and just basically run my own rideshare, I'm happy to drive people. And then they sign a waiver because I do drive a little fast on 280. If you see my blog, you'll know why. So that's the point. But I'm happy to do that. That's the essence of the sharing economy. Now, to enable that to happen at an individual scale, all those technologies we talked about have to happen. I've got to be able to rate and know who it is. I've got to figure out if I can trust someone that's on the other end. I've got to have identity in place. On the other flip side, on the demand side, that makes sense. People are wanting a ride. On the supply side, I've got to be giving a ride. People need to know I'm there, I'm in place to make this happen. And this is happening in every single part of every industry. This is the one that baffles people's mind. Money and currency. How do we raise money? How do we move stuff around? Anything from Kickstarter to Indiegogo. We've got ways to raise money before. Are there any VCs in the room? Okay. This is disintermediating the VCs. This is disintermediating producers and people who traditionally controlled good taste. Because now what we're doing is we're going to the crowd for good taste. They're validating the ideas. It's like every day is a day on KQED, right? It's a pledge drive every day, right? That's what they're up against. And the point being is, if it's good, people will vote for it. People will fund it. People will get it out there. That's the intent behind this, right? And that's driving that. We have the other side of it. Lending Club and Kiva, you can give things to people. You can actually do microloans and micro-lending, right, on the money side. And yes, it might be a little bit higher interest. And yes, there are different rules in place to manage risk so that those things actually happen. But that's the essence of this, what's happening in the sharing economy. Now, if we take it to another area, which we all know very well, stuff, right? eBay, right? Things like eBay pop up. We've had that for a while. We've had Craigslist for a while. But then there's things like Etsy that's doing crafts and very interesting things that people wouldn't have thought was going to be hot, like things out of 3D printers, crafts out of 3D printers. How many been to a maker fair? They do that in San Mateo, I think, once a year in the summer. It's great. People are building things. They're putting crafts. They're selling them up on what's out there. Rent the runway. Do you need to go buy a brand new dress, or can you buy a used dress and use it once and return it, right? What is these elements that are happening? We're talking about things that are expensive goods that we're driving down from a capacity perspective, right? And we are actually accessing slices of usage. We're accessing, not owning. And you're doing it with stuff, right? You're taking used stuff, bringing it back out there. We're basically digitizing the garage sale, which is usually a mess, and lots of interesting people do show up to your house when you post something on Craigslist and say free. So then we've got services in place. There's a whole bunch of folks that are in this world of freelancing. And they're actually organizing other freelances in Odesk, or if you're thinking about here in Elance, that's a very interesting market. Right? People are actually saying, okay, interesting capacity, lots of people with spare time, part-time workers that can actually go out and do and have their own businesses. They're being rated, right? They're getting quality scores. People are being references. Yes, it's gamed like Yelp, right? But after a while, you know who's good and who's not, and those referrals do come into place. And then we've, on the other end, TaskRabbit. I need someone to go pick up 15 things, make copies, whatever. Here's my goal. If you're interested, go do it, right? TaskRabbit goes out and takes tasks out. Want to clean my house? Go find someone in TaskRabbit. Need to go fix a sprinkler system? Go to TaskRabbit or go to Home Depot. Your choice, right? That's the same kind of thing. And we're digitalizing these experiences almost everywhere. We're taking extra capacity. We're taking value services. We're bringing value exchange and putting them together. Space is the other big one. Anyone use Airbnb? That's a lot of people, right? Airbnb is basically you could have a house, rent out a room, not be there, have a secondary home, put it on the Airbnb market, and get paid for it, right? It's a way, an organized way to build a reputation system so that you have a safe kind of environment where the people who rent write a review about your place. You put it out there, and people actually then rate against the place, and you put it out there and rate against the renter, and you create this interesting market where unused capacity now has a market. Wow, think about all the cloud compute power that could be done this way. Well, it should be, but it isn't yet. But if you think about what happens in programmatic ads, real-time bidding for search wars, for search engine optimization, it's already happening like that. We're taking unused capacity and creating demand against things that aren't in place. And space is a great example because we can feel it, we can touch it, right? If you need extra office space, there's co-sharing, co-working places that are being listed here in terms of all the different desks there. We all know Uber, right? That's the same kind of function. I mean, if you think about it, how many cars sit idle? There's this other service, I can't remember the name right now. You go to the SFO airport, you park the car, and they rent the car out while you're away. Which one is that? Flight car. Except for the one guy that lost his car. It got stolen. That was funny, though. But it's a rare exception. It's a rare exception. So if you're willing to do that, you could be out flying and having your car rented out. That's extra capacity in play. That's extra capacity working for you. And so that's what we're seeing in this, right? Food, maybe you're lonely. Maybe you want to cook for other people. Random people show up at your house for dinner, right? It even goes that far, right? Random people show up and use your SAP license with you. Okay? I mean, that's what we're talking about, right? Now, the reason I bring out these social examples is because it's natural. People are doing this, right? And you're seeing these models emerge, and the question is, how do we bring this back into what we're doing? And if you think about how you can benefit against this, right, let's think about when and where this is appropriate. The first piece that's important is when you identify underutilized assets, luxury cars, luxury boats, yachts, or extra server capacity and hardware that you've purchased without understanding. Anyone from the federal government here? Okay, I'm not going to rag on them too hard, but there's a procurement role in GSA where if you buy new software, you have to buy new hardware and database. I wonder who wrote that into the contract and the legislation. Think about that. Think how much unused database and hardware is sitting in the federal government on premises. Right? This is not going to happen in the cloud. Yeah, right. But the point being, that's there. If you could access that kind of service on the fly in the sharing economy and open that to other agencies so that you can spread out the cost of what was already purchased, wait, you already do that with your data centers. Right? Every company's got data centers with so much extra capacity. Maybe there's a way you can tap into that. Maybe you can create a SETI-like experience. Everyone see that? You open up your servers for SETI, they're searching for extraterrestrial life, extra compute power is being used to go search the universe. It was happening like big in 10 years ago. That's the kind of stuff we're talking about. So what do you have are underutilized assets that you can open up? Now the other way is maybe it's not underutilized assets, maybe it's assets that typically have been used once. You buy per seat. Yeah, but how many users are there? 4. You bought 100 of those. What's wrong with you? Okay, lots of shelfware. How do we handle this? Well, maybe it comes down to this. Let's actually get it down per use. Let's get it down per use over a period of time. Then let's get it to something that looks like what perpetual looked like. And then maybe what we get it to a point where we actually own it. Right? The gradations are getting smaller and smaller in terms of how you access software. Maybe I pay per outcome. I don't even pay per use. Maybe I pay when I get a result. How many folks are thinking about these weird, crazy business models on pricing right now? Raise it up high. That's the beauty of this conference, because you're going to want to talk to these people, because they're doing something different. And if you're thinking about new ways of pricing, the other thing that's actually happening is software and hardware becoming embedded. Right? The hottest thing. Software companies, I'd say, are not being funded the way they were 5 years ago. Device manufacturers that have embedded software are. A lot of interesting things coming back. Why is that? Now, the models on those devices, other than Apple, is we're probably pretty much going to give it away to you. We're not going to make a lot of money on the hardware, but we're going to make a ton of money on the data. So how do you price and build a licensing model against the data? When you still want to monetize the cost of the hardware development and all that other piece, and there are software apps and ecosystems that are part of it, but the real gold is in the data. Now that becomes interesting. What policies, what T&Cs do you put in so that the data is aggregated, the data is available? Oh wait, in the consumer world, it's great. Everyone just clicks OK. Right? 500-page terms and conditions. Oh, OK, accept. No lawyers, no procurement people. What a great life, right? No one to worry about on the other end, right? No salespeople calling back saying, can we change this clause, right? No back and forth at midnight on December 31st. Right? None of that. And so we're moving into that model. Now, the third piece is you're going to have to actually build community and the goodwill of the community in the sharing economy. And that's part of the value exchange and trade-off. And what I mean by that is, why would people bother to write a review? And this is the interesting thing, right? Angie's List. Anybody ever use Angie's List to find like a plumber, a doctor, a dentist, a hardware person? Angie's List, you actually pay to subscribe to be part of a service where everybody contributes a review, right? What we're trying to do is the same thing here in the sharing economy is, how was that software? Did someone build something and extend it, right? Was there something cool? How do we build that same ecosystem? And the way you kind of do it in monetization on the software side is you're going to want to do the same thing. You're trading on the goodwill of people, answering a support call, fixing a request, taking advantage of the community, bringing it back to life. right? This device doesn't work, but I wrote this other piece of code. And how do we make that code work? Okay. And then there's the gold, building a big data trove. This is actually what the end game is. It's not selling more software licenses. I actually honestly believe it's not going to be more licenses, more outcomes. It's actually building that big data trove. And we'll talk very quickly about that. But we actually think that if 90% of the world's data was created in the last 2 years, which is an awesome stat everyone uses, 95% of that data was created outside of your four walls. By 2020, 60% of the data you access is not going to be sitting inside your four walls that's mission critical. Add that to all the people that are going to talk about devices. We have bigger numbers than other people because we actually think that the average person is carrying like 5 to 6 devices at this moment, not including the watches. We think by 2020, it's 80 billion devices. Not 50, 80, right? Think about all the data that's sitting out there contextually that you're going to be mining and going against and building models against. And that's why if there's a piece in HBR, I'm going to touch this briefly, there's this importance of building big data business models. How many people use Google Maps? Google Maps with traffic. Fun, right? Get around things, Waze, even better, move around. Well, if you're out of gas, you might pay $1 extra for an app that helps you find the nearest gas station, right? You might pay. You might not subscribe to it for a whole year for $12, but you might pay per use. Let's do it for $1, put my fingerprint, use Apple Pay, and be done. You might. But you know what? The gas station, on the other hand, will pay you $50,000 to connect to the car, to connect back to you, to actually make an offer for a hot dog and a Coke. Right? That's the model. And that's what we're seeing. Now, let's go back to something even older than that. FedEx. Right? In 1990, FedEx was doing awesome. In the 90s, they were doing great. Business was growing. They kept adding contact centers. They kept adding agents. It kept getting very expensive to service a call. What were the top 3 questions people at FedEx were getting? Where's my package? Where the hell is my package? Where the bleep is my package? How do you solve that problem? Add more agents? No. You open up the system. And that's what we're doing. They opened up the system. You can track the package now. On the truck. Out for delivery. Still on the truck. All right, okay, great. How many people waited for their iPhone 6 last few weeks? I live in Cupertino. All right, I'll be fully honest. I live in Cupertino. I'm waiting for a package. I see my UPS truck come past me 17 times because I'm a residential customer. I don't get anything until after 4 p.m. Imagine if I stuck Waze on the truck. They allowed me to pay extra to get a barcode and hunt down the driver so I can get my iPhone 6. How much would you pay to do that? $5? $10? $15? I mean, I would pay $25. I'm such an idiot for this. Right? I would pay $25 to go get my iPhone earlier. Okay, but maybe they deliver it somewhere else. Maybe they reroute it for $10. Maybe they put it to the nearest, like, Kinko's, FedEx store, whatever. But that's what I'm talking about. We're creating brand new business models like that. And if someone set up a system that said, hey, here are the extra pieces, or I can pick this up for you, you tie that back into the model, now you have all these elements around that sharing economy. So that's what we're getting here. Information brokering, this is very different. When we're talking about brokering, you've got all this information. You could sell the raw information to someone that could pay for it, like Thomson Reuters, LexisNexis. You could add extra stuff like Gov.to data, Bureau of Labor Statistics, any free information, resell that information to someone else and make money. You could take all your devices, all your connection points, and sell that to someone else against cell phone tower data from Verizon or AT&T. There's a lot of stuff here that's untapped. And the last piece here is just think about it. You're either the arms dealer, people providing the software to make this happen, or technology. You're either the content, taking that stuff inside you, rebrokering that, selling to other people, or you're the network, and you're making all that happen. 4 companies in the world are doing all 3 right now, and you don't know that. And they're traversing both the enterprise and the consumer world. Name them. Who? Who? Axion, okay. Who else? Microsoft? Google? Amazon? And Apple. They're playing all 3. So watch that carefully because that's that model. And they've got payments, and they've got content, and they've got stuff to sell. Commerce is in place. Very, very interesting models. Okay, so what are we doing? When we're thinking about how you apply the sharing economy principles back to here, we take the underutilized assets and we have to change the pricing model per use, per instance over time, per use over time. We're also thinking about outcomes. Maybe people just pay for an outcome. How do we build that against that? Or maybe we do demand-based pricing, right? Perishables. Airline seats are perishable. Hotel rooms are perishable because of time. If time is a factor, it's perishable, right? And you want to make sure that that's built into your model when you think about this. All right, so how are you building for this? How are you building for a sharing economy? You've got to be able to answer these questions. Most people can't do this. And I'm just throwing these out here very quickly as how do you access information? Easy to get to. How do you actually service or sell to a customer segment of one? How do you then service to a customer segment of one? What do you can do in terms of building a culture that actually thinks about this? And this becomes one of those next parts. And so we actually see things happening. We're in a shift. We're in a shift right now in terms of development, technology platforms, consumer platforms that actually have to touch these 7 things. The first thing that's important is right time context. Everything's contextual. I need data on role, location, relationship, time. I need stuff that's about what process I'm in. I need to know intent, right? I need to know how you feel. Anyone from Comcast here? Anyone ever try to cancel a Comcast account? Can you do it on the web? And when you get on the phone, what happens? They argue with you, but that's not it. My Comcast salesperson tried to upsell me on the NFL package. I'm canceling. I'm mad. I've spent 3 hours trying to figure out how to use a self-service form to end this relationship. And they're selling me an NFL package. Sentiment is very important. Brand authenticity, we talked about, balancing trust and transparency, especially if you're dealing with data. Probabilistic processes, short processes, 30 seconds of mobility. You're decomposing processes to build choose-your-own-adventure experiences. That's what we're talking about. Self-learning systems, we're ingesting corpuses of data. They're getting smarter. They're learning. They're expanding. Accessible information. It's access, not ownership. You are not trying to build the world's best data warehouse on customers. You tried that 5 times. Don't do it again. But what you want is access information on the fly. Bring that together so you can actually create these new experiences. You're also managed by self-interest. Make it easy. Make the experiences frictionless, drive value in the system, and then more importantly, you need to open up your experiences like FedEx to co-innovate, co-create on your systems. Who is your partner certified on you? I ask this question all the time because when I deal with publishers, everybody's proud about the relationship with someone else. But who is certified on you? What are you building? How are you monetizing that partnership? How are you opening up that partnership so other people can build on your technology? I don't care if you're certified on someone else. Who's certified on you? And that's the flip in the question. So real quick, I'm going to pass through context. I'm going to pass this piece. The only thing about this Disney piece that I'm talking about here is the magic bands. It's pretty awesome. People paid more to be at a park to be tracked. They know exactly where you are. They know if the bathrooms are full. They know if they need to change the way the rides are. They're collecting data. You paid more for the magic brand so that you can be tracked. Who else gets this kind of business? It's amazing, right? But they're tracking the data, and they're using it to refine the experiences and build against it. OK, so real quick, not a technology shift. This is a business model shift. We're not selling products and services. Think about what happens. If that design point is we are selling outcomes, we're keeping a brand promise, what does that mean to your business? Where do we go with that? Different types of workers. We all know this. It's not about age. Data. Every model you build going forward, whether it's in the sharing economy, which is really built around data, Uber, at the end of the day, is a data collection service to understand what are the most profitable routes and how much I can extract out of that route. And where those most important centers are of wealth that are willing to pay for something. They have all that data. Amazon, at the end of the day, has all of Netflix's data. Who do you think is going to win? Right? I always wonder. Netflix is not a client, thank God, because they'll be killing me at this moment. But the point being is, what do you do with Netflix at the end of the day? Amazon bought the Washington Post. Bezos bought the Washington Post for a song. The Post is a podunk paper. It is not even a national paper. But with 50 distribution centers, what happens? It becomes a national paper. You raise the ad rates. You have the content from the post that becomes part of Amazon News. You can make an offer from the physical world to the digital world. Holy, what is going on? If you're backing Amazon today, you are aiding and abetting the enemy. That's what's going on, right? Because they've got the data. They know who's going to buy. They've made it so easy for you to buy. They know exactly how much you'll pay, know exactly when you'll get this thing. They have the whole system integrated, whether it's a cloud compute service that you're offloading because their peak only starts at November 15th and ends at January 15th. You are subsidizing them. There goes my Amazon contract. But anyways, my point being is that's what's going on, right? And you have to be aware of that. Revenue coming from data and insights. In the sharing economy, it's about data and insights. That's the monetization engine. You can build a sharing economy model, but make sure you monetize against the data and insights because that's where the value is going to come from. And people say you need a chief digital officer. No, just enable all your people to be digitally enabled, thinking about this business transformation. HR people that know how to hire folks. CFOs that understand that the revenue models aren't just about SOP 72. It's about how do we get new slices of monetization? How do we build brand new business models? How do we build brand new revenue captures? And then think about digital artisans, because if you got a lot of data scientists, a lot of engineers, you need to balance them out, right brain versus left brain. Find design thinking people. Find anthropologists. Find philosophers. Because you're building new models. You're building human interaction experiences that are very different for everyone. And so real quickly, build new experiences. What is your brand about? Build new experiences. If you want to participate in the sharing economy, you're crafting a brand new experience. Get the culture right. Get digital DNA in place. Build the left brain, right brain folks, and get the digital artisans there. Don't throw out the technologies. What you have there is a transaction layer. You're abstracting when you put into a device. You're abstracting when you're embedding software into hardware. And while you're doing that, think about where data plays a role. That data is part of that sharing economy. If I'm giving you something for free or creating an exchange of value, I'm capturing context. You want to capture that context so you can monetize it. And then the last piece is really about opening up the system for co-innovation and partners. Book, it's actually available on Amazon now. You can pre-order it, and I'll go. So thank you very much.
Many thanks, Ray. I think that there was a good reminder. We are, of course, in the B2B business serving you. Most of our customers are in the B2B business. And I think it's very easy if you see trends in the B2B space like sharing economy to say, that's B2C. Fortunately, this change has nothing to do with us because we are in B2B, and in B2B things don't change that fast. And for example, in respect to licensing, you think of all these app stores, and everybody at home is using an iPhone, and children are downloading games, etc. I tell you, we're dealing with many customers who were in the high-tech industry selling B2B who would love to have their software being available in the same commercial model as B2C software, where you can just sit, click, get a license, download it, get a free feature, etc. So I think monitoring the B2C space and try to see how you can adapt that to the B2B world is always a worthwhile exercise, because the consumers are just more agile, more flexible, are adapting more quickly, and as a company you can probably see earlier how the business-to-business world is also going to change. Thanks again, Ray. I have the pleasure to